The Terminids, a relentless, swarming force of chitin and claw, have long been the focus of military scholars, xenobiologists, and strategists alike. While their war against the forces of Super-Earth is waged in the chaos of gunfire and orbital bombardments, an even greater battle is fought in the halls of scientific inquiry. Where did these creatures come from? Are they the natural, if horrifying, result of an alien evolutionary process, or are they something far worse, an invasive artificial plague set loose upon the galaxy, following some forgotten directive from an unknown master? The truth remains elusive, buried beneath layers of biological complexity and endless waves of insectoid aggression. Yet, the more we study the Terminids, the clearer it becomes that they are no mere planetary nuisance. They are something more, something ancient, something designed for conquest. And if we fail to understand their origins, we may be doomed to fall before their inevitable tide. Among all the vile forms of Terminid life, few appear as lowly and insignificant as the Scavenger. It is a creature of little physical threat, small, frail, and lacking the brutal efficiency of its fully developed kin. Alone, a Scavenger poses no more danger than an oversized pest. Its simple claw attacks incapable of penetrating even basic Helldiver armor. And yet, it is through these seemingly harmless drones that the swarm functions as a singular, overwhelming force. For while the Scavenger does not kill, it calls. Upon detecting an intruder, it raises its abdomen and unleashes a piercing shriek, a sound that is more than a mere alarm, more than a simple signal. It is a catalyst, a trigger in the hive mind that sets in motion an unrelenting assault. This instinctual reaction, this deeply embedded behavior, raises an unsettling question. Is this merely an evolved survival mechanism, or the precise programmed action of a bioweapon? Many scholars within the War Academy of Super-Earth argue that the Terminids are the natural apex organisms of their respective homeworlds. According to this theory, they are the product of millions of years of harsh evolutionary pressure, adapting to the extreme environments of barren wastelands, toxic jungles, and irradiated landscapes. Their chitinous exoskeletons, capable of withstanding environmental hazards that would kill lesser creatures, suggest a long history of natural selection favoring resilience above all else. Their ability to burrow into the ground, remain dormant for extended periods, and even survive in oxygen-starved conditions indicates that they are not only native to their planets, but have likely dominated them for thousands, if not millions, of years. If this theory holds true, the Scavenger is simply one cog in the greater biological machine of the Hive, a drone that exists to support the overall survival and expansion of its species. Further evidence supporting the native evolution theory lies in the ecological integration of the Terminids into their respective planetary biospheres. They do not appear to disrupt the natural balance of their environments. Rather, they are the balance. Every biological function of the swarm serves a purpose. Warriors and hunters act as primary predators, keeping other species in check, while the massive behemoths reshape the land itself, burrowing vast tunnels and expanding nesting grounds. The Scavenger, despite its lowly status, plays an essential role in this ecosystem. By alerting the colony to intruders, it ensures that the swarm is always aware of potential threats, maintaining the rigid control that Terminids have over their world. In some cases, captured Scavengers have even been observed feasting on the remains of their fallen kin, a behavior that suggests an intrinsic role in biological recycling, a grim but effective means of sustaining the swarm without exhausting external resources. Yet, despite these compelling arguments, an even darker theory persists, one that paints the Terminids not as the dominant life forms of their planets, but as something far more insidious. If the native evolution theory is correct, then why do the Terminids appear on multiple planets, spread across the galaxy, with no discernible means of space travel? Unlike the Cyborg Nation or the Illuminate, the Terminids possess no visible technology, no infrastructure capable of launching them from world to world. And yet, wherever Super-Earth expands, they are there, waiting, lying in the dust, in the shadows, beneath the ground. The war against them is not a battle for a single world. It is a campaign waged across entire star systems, against an enemy that seems to be everywhere, all at once. This has led some researchers to propose a far more terrifying alternative. The Terminids are not native to these planets at all. Instead, they are an invasive species, a biological weapon that is actively spreading. The Scavenger, with its seemingly harmless shriek, is no mere drone. It is the herald of an infection, a viral carrier designed to alert the greater swarm of a new environment ripe for conquest. If this theory is correct, then the Terminids are not creatures born of nature's chaotic whim, but something engineered, a force built with a singular purpose: to consume, adapt, and expand. If they were truly a natural species, their spread across multiple planets would be an impossibility without the aid of some higher intelligence. And yet, they show no signs of intelligence as we define it. They do not build, they do not communicate beyond their instinctual pheromone signals, and they do not innovate. What they do is consume. And when there is nothing left, they move on. But how? Some scholars believe that the Terminids were created, perhaps by an unknown alien race, long since perished, that designed them as weapons of war. Perhaps they were a failed experiment in bioengineering, abandoned by their makers, but left with the singular drive to continue their directive. Perhaps deep within the swarm's genetic code lies a command still being followed, long after the voices that first spoke it have gone silent. The true horror of this theory is not just the implication that the Terminids were designed, it is the possibility that they cannot be stopped. If they are indeed an invasive force, then what Helldivers fight now is not a war against a mere species, but a galactic-scale infestation. And if history has taught us anything, it is that an infestation does not negotiate. It does not surrender. It does not stop. It simply grows, expands, spreads. And what of the Scavenger? This pitiful creature so often dismissed as little more than a nuisance. In light of this theory, its role takes on a far greater and more menacing significance. It is the scout, the probe, the carrier of the Terminid plague. It is the first symptom of an infection that will, if left unchecked, consume everything in its path. For every scavenger that releases its pheromone-laden cry, dozens more follow, then hundreds, then thousands. The swarm does not simply exist, it multiplies. And that is why we fight. That is why we burn their nests, bombard their hives, and obliterate their young before they ever have the chance to grow. Because to hesitate, even for a moment, is to allow the Terminids to spread, to allow them to find new ground, to allow them to take root. And once they do, they will never be removed. The Scavenger's shriek is not just a call for reinforcements. It is not just an alarm. It is a warning. And if we fail to heed it, we may soon find ourselves at the mercy of a force that does not think, does not fear, and does not stop, until all is consumed. Beneath the sterile, flickering light of an autopsy chamber, the Scavenger lies dissected, its twitching limbs finally still, its body splayed open to reveal the intricate biological mechanisms that define its existence. At first glance, it is an insignificant creature, frail, small, a mere insectoid among the terrifying ranks of its larger, deadlier kin. But this is a deception. The Scavenger is not weak. It is not unimportant. It is, in truth, a biological marvel, a living instrument of the swarm, designed with chilling precision to serve as the first link in an unbreakable chain of destruction. Every inch of its body, from the rigid, chitinous plating that encases it to the chemical sensitivity of its pheromone-releasing glands, is engineered for war. To understand the Scavenger is to glimpse the inner workings of the Terminid swarm itself, to peer into the very biological blueprint of an unstoppable species, perfected through the brutal process of survival and adaptation. The creature's form is nightmarishly familiar, evoking comparisons to Earth's arthropods while also feeling entirely alien. Its body is compact, typically measuring between 0.8 and 1 meter in height when fully extended, though it rarely stands at its full height, preferring to move low to the ground in a hunched, skittering posture. The thorax, the central mass of its body, is broad and heavily segmented, its plating designed for flexibility, rather than brute defense. Unlike the heavily armored warrior caste, which can withstand sustained fire before collapsing, the scavenger's greatest strength lies not in its durability, but in its speed. Its exoskeleton, darkened to an almost obsidian sheen in older specimens, is not a fortress, but rather a lightweight shell optimized for rapid movement, allowing it to dart unpredictably, navigate uneven terrain with ease, and avoid direct combat when necessary. When threatened, it does not stand its ground. It does not need to. Instead, it shrieks, calling forth the tide of its brethren, ensuring that no intruder survives long enough to kill it twice. The composition of the scavenger's exoskeleton remains a topic of ongoing study, as its material properties defy easy classification. Unlike terrestrial arthropods, which rely on chitin and calcium carbonate for structural support, the scavenger's plating appears to be composed of a dense organic polymer, interwoven with trace metallic elements, granting it a degree of resistance against environmental hazards, including corrosive atmospheres and extreme temperatures. While not impervious to gunfire, its outer shell is thick enough to deflect small-caliber projectiles at oblique angles, and its reinforced joint structures allow it to withstand concussive force far beyond what would be expected of a creature its size. However, this defensive adaptation does not extend to uniform coverage. Certain regions, particularly the underbelly and facial structures, remain vulnerable to concentrated attacks, suggesting that the species evolved to rely on mobility rather than sheer resilience. These weaknesses are further accentuated by the segmented nature of the exoskeleton, which, while allowing for rapid movement, also creates natural fault lines that can be exploited by precise strikes. Beneath this armored exterior lies a highly specialized musculoskeletal system, one that deviates significantly from both vertebrate and invertebrate physiology. The creature's limbs, deceptively slender and wiry, are constructed around dense fibrous musculature, capable of exerting explosive bursts of speed and force. Unlike the warriors, whose sheer bulk makes them cumbersome in tight spaces, the scavenger's limb structure is designed for precision and agility, allowing it to leap great distances, scale vertical surfaces, and even execute rapid lateral movements to evade attacks. Its quad-limbed stance provides it with an unnerving degree of balance, making it nearly impossible to knock off its feet in combat. The forelimbs, ending in curved serrated claws, serve multiple functions, primarily for digging, but also for short-range melee attacks, capable of inflicting deep lacerations on unarmored targets. Unlike higher caste Terminids, which possess massive crushing appendages, the scavenger's claws are not designed for outright killing. Instead, their primary function appears to be disabling intruders long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Specimens have been observed using these claws not only to strike enemies, but also to cling to surfaces and burrow beneath loose soil, a trait that allows them to ambush unsuspecting prey with terrifying efficiency. Yet, perhaps the most fascinating and disturbing aspect of the scavenger's biology is not its physical form, but rather its sensory perception, the means by which it interacts with the world around it. Unlike humans, who rely primarily on vision and sound, the scavenger perceives reality in a way that is almost entirely alien, governed by chemical and vibrational signals rather than light and sound. Its eyes, small, black, and eerily lifeless, are nothing more than rudimentary photoreceptors, capable of detecting movement and basic light levels but offering no detailed image resolution. It does not see in the way that we do. It senses, relying instead on a hypersensitive olfactory system that allows it to detect even the faintest traces of foreign presence in its environment. At the core of this sensory system lies a network of specialized pheromone receptors, capable of picking up the chemical signatures of other terminids, as well as intruding organisms. When a scavenger detects an enemy, it does not react as an individual. It reacts as a node in a vast biological network, instantly releasing a burst of airborne pheromones that alert all nearby terminids to its discovery. This ability, combined with its piercing shriek, ensures that even a single surviving scavenger can spell doom for an entire squad of helldivers. The effectiveness of this alarm system suggests a level of hive mind communication, one that extends beyond mere instinctual response. It has been hypothesized that the scavenger, along with other lesser terminids, functions as a kind of biological sensor array, constantly feeding environmental data back to the greater swarm. This could explain their uncanny ability to coordinate attacks, responding to enemy movements with terrifying speed and precision. Some researchers have even speculated that the Terminids may possess a primitive form of telepathic communication, though no conclusive evidence has yet been found to support this claim. Beneath its exoskeleton and sensory array, the scavenger's internal structure is an exercise in biological efficiency, stripped of unnecessary complexity in favor of pure survival function. Unlike mammals, which rely on a centralized cardiovascular system, the scavenger's circulatory network is diffuse, consisting of multiple secondary pump organs that ensure continued mobility even after sustaining significant trauma. This decentralized design allows it to survive injuries that would be instantly fatal to most Earth-based organisms. Autopsies have revealed that even when its primary neural cluster is destroyed, a scavenger can remain active for several minutes, attacking blindly until complete systemic shutdown occurs. Its digestive system is similarly optimized, capable of processing a wide range of organic materials, from rotting carrion to plant matter, suggesting that it feeds opportunistically, consuming whatever is available to sustain its energy reserves. This voracious metabolic capability ensures that no matter where the swarm spreads, its lesser drones will never lack for sustenance. Everything about the scavenger, the way it moves, the way it perceives its surroundings, the way it summons death upon its enemies, serves a singular, horrifying purpose: to ensure that the swarm endures. It is not merely an insect, not merely a drone, but a piece of a larger organism, one that stretches beyond the boundaries of its own body, linking it to a species that operates as a singular, unrelenting entity. To underestimate the scavenger is to misunderstand the true nature of the Terminids, and to misunderstand them is to invite annihilation. Beneath the scorched skies of countless war-ravaged planets, where the dust of fallen civilizations mingles with the acrid stench of alien biology, the scavenger moves unseen, a silent specter of the swarm. It is neither a warrior nor a builder, neither a predator nor a conqueror in its own right. Instead, it is something far more insidious, a herald of death, a living alarm system whose sole purpose is to ensure that the Terminid tide is never far behind. Its existence is not measured in individual victories, but in its ability to summon destruction, to identify threats and beckon the swarm before an enemy can react. A scavenger is not meant to kill. It is meant to doom those who cross its path. Its daily life, if such a thing can be said to exist in the heart of a hive beast, is one of ceaseless movement, a tireless patrol across the ever-expanding territory of the Terminids. It does not hunt in the traditional sense, for it lacks the brute strength of a warrior, or the overwhelming force of an alpha-class Terminid. Instead, it seeks, it watches, it listens. The scavenger operates on pure instinct, guided by the hive's omnipresent will. Its behavior dictated not by intelligence, but by a series of deeply ingrained biological imperatives that ensure its unwavering loyalty to the swarm. Even when alone, a scavenger is never truly isolated. It is connected, part of a vast and unseen network of pheromonal signals that relay information across miles of rugged, hostile terrain. The moment it detects an intruder, it reacts with chilling efficiency, shrieking its piercing call and releasing a cloud of chemical distress signals, ensuring that no enemy, no matter how heavily armed, can move unnoticed for long. Despite its fragile frame, the scavenger is far from defenseless. If cornered, it will lash out with its serrated claws, slashing at exposed flesh with wild, desperate movements. Though it lacks the sheer power to tear through armor, its strikes are precise and fast, capable of inflicting deep wounds in unprotected areas. When truly desperate, the scavenger will burrow beneath the soil, using its clawed forelimbs to quickly disappear beneath the ground before re-emerging behind its target. However, such acts of aggression are secondary to its primary function: escape and summoning. The scavenger does not exist to fight. It exists to prolong the battle, to overwhelm through sheer numbers rather than individual strength. A single scavenger is an inconvenience. A dozen, a hazard, 100, the beginning of a massacre. Among the swarm, the scavenger occupies the lowest rung of the Terminid hierarchy, a mere drone in the service of the greater hive. It is neither an elite soldier nor a protector of the queen, but rather a disposable extension of the swarm's collective will, existing only to facilitate the expansion of the hive's reach. Unlike the towering behemoths or the brutal warrior caste, the scavenger's individual life holds no value, only its function matters. If it is killed, another will take its place. If 100 die, 1,000 more will be birthed to replace them. The scavenger does not question, does not hesitate. It moves with the unrelenting certainty of a machine, obeying a code written not in thought, but in biological imperative. Yet, even within this rigid structure, there is purpose. The scavenger's connection to the hive is absolute, and it follows an order that extends far beyond its own meager existence. It never challenges, never deviates, never seeks its own survival at the cost of the swarm. It exists only to serve. Some researchers believe that the scavenger, like other lower caste terminids, is directly linked to the queen through pheromonal resonance, acting as a sensor node in the vast organic machine that is the hive. Others theorize that it lacks the ability to think in any meaningful way at all, that it is a puppet moved by unseen strings, an extension of the hive's greater consciousness, rather than a creature with its own sense of self. Its life is short, brutal, and utterly devoid of individuality. Born from the fetid depths of a terminid hatchery, the scavenger begins its existence as a larval organism, little more than a soft-bodied grub that writhes in the nutrient-rich filth of the hive's brood chambers. These sprawling, pulsating caverns, hidden beneath layers of hardened exoskeletal resin, serve as the birthing grounds of the swarm, a place where thousands, perhaps millions, of terminid young are spawned in grotesque masses, suspended in thick mucosal sacs that provide them with the sustenance needed to complete their transformation. In this early stage, the scavenger is weak, blind, and utterly dependent on the hive, relying on specialized nurse drones to feed and protect it until it reaches the threshold of metamorphosis. When the time comes, the larva undergoes a rapid and violent transformation, its soft body hardening as its internal structure reshapes itself into something more suited for the endless war to come. This process, a grotesque hybrid of molting and metamorphosis, is accelerated by the hive's own chemical control mechanisms. Pheromonal triggers, likely secreted by the queen herself, determine the caste of each developing terminid. A single chemical alteration deciding whether the creature will become a lowly scavenger, a hulking warrior, or something far worse. For the vast majority, the path is already chosen. Only the strongest, the largest, and the most biologically efficient are granted the honor of ascending to the warrior caste, while the rest, weak, disposable, and expendable, are doomed to the fate of the scavenger. Upon reaching maturity, the newly formed scavenger crawls from its birthing chamber, its body still soft and vulnerable, its exoskeleton yet to fully harden. In these first few hours, it is at its most fragile, a moment of weakness rarely afforded to the creatures of the swarm. But the hive does not nurture weakness. The scavenger is immediately thrust into its role, driven by instinct to begin its ceaseless patrol of the hive's outermost territory. There is no learning period, no adjustment phase. It is simply born knowing, a genetic memory ingrained within it from the moment of its creation. For a time, it will serve as a simple scout, a disposable drone tasked with mapping the boundaries of the hive's dominion. But for those that survive, those that endure the constant threat of combat, the attrition of endless war, and the ever-present brutality of existence in the swarm, something more awaits. Given time and the right conditions, a scavenger may metamorphose once more, shedding its fragile form and emerging as a warrior, its body swelling with hardened muscle and armor plating, its claws sharpening into true weapons of war. Those that fail to achieve this transformation simply continue their ceaseless existence, running, screaming, dying, and being replaced in an unending cycle of attrition. There is no old age for the scavenger. There is no natural end. It does not live to see its kind flourish, nor does it seek a purpose beyond what has been written into its genetic code. It fights until it is slain, and when it dies, its body is left to rot or consumed by its kin, its nutrients recycled into the endless cycle of terminid life. In the grand scheme of the hive, it is nothing more than a single beat in an eternal war drum, a flicker of motion in a tide of chitin and blood. It is an organism without self, without identity. It is the first thing you see before the swarm descends. And, if it is allowed to scream, it is the last warning you will ever receive. The scavenger, though the lowest and most expendable of all Terminid castes, is far from a mere mindless drone. It is, in many ways, the foundation upon which the swarm's survival is built. A living alarm system, an early warning beacon, a sensor array in an endless tide of chitin and hunger. But to assume that its role is simply that of a weak, inconsequential scout is a fatal mistake. Despite its diminutive size and lack of direct offensive capability, the scavenger is a master of survival, adapting to the harshest environments, evading extermination, and ensuring that the Hive always has the upper hand against those who dare to trespass into its domain. The scavenger's very existence is proof of the swarm's ability to endure, to expand, to evolve. It is not a warrior, it is not a killer, but it is something far more insidious, an organism built to outlast, to persist, and to ensure that no enemy of the Terminids ever truly fights alone. Though its role may appear limited at first glance, the scavenger is an adaptive survivor, capable of enduring conditions that would kill most other organisms. It has been found on arid desert worlds, where the ground is scorched and dry, yet it still thrives, burrowing beneath the cracked surface to escape the heat and emerging only when its prey is near. It has been found on toxic, swamp-ridden planets, where the air itself is thick with corrosive gases, yet its exoskeleton resists decay, its respiratory system filtering out lethal contaminants with an efficiency that suggests deep evolutionary refinement. It has been found in icy wastelands, buried beneath meters of frost, its metabolism slowing to an almost hibernation-like state, only to awaken in an instant at the first scent of prey. No climate is too extreme, no ecosystem too hostile. Where the scavenger goes, the swarm follows, and the swarm never leaves. Its ability to endure across such varied environments suggests that the scavenger is not simply evolving in response to its surroundings, but is instead pre-adapted to a vast array of potential habitats, as if its biology were crafted not for survival on one planet, but for infestation across many. This raises a terrifying implication. Either the Terminids have been spreading across the stars for far longer than we have realized, or they were designed, engineered to thrive in any world, in any condition, until they overtake everything. The scavenger, with its simple yet ruthlessly effective biology, serves as living proof of this dark possibility. When confronted by foreign threats, be they super-Earth helldivers, the cyborg nation, or even other Terminid strains, the scavenger does not fight. It does not engage in combat unless it has no other choice, for its greatest weapon is not its claws or its speed, but its ability to ensure that it is never alone. The scavenger's first and most effective survival strategy is its pheromone-based alarm system, a highly evolved biological response that ensures that the moment an enemy is detected, the entire swarm is alerted. When it encounters an intruder, it does not hesitate. It raises its abdomen, chirps with a piercing, rattling sound, and floods the air with pheromonal distress signals, instantly summoning reinforcements. This ability, more than anything else, ensures that even if a scavenger is slain, its presence will never be forgotten. Against human forces, this biological alarm is particularly effective. Helldiver squads are built around precision, small unit tactics, and overwhelming firepower. But the scavenger denies them the ability to remain undetected. It forces them into a war of attrition, where every engagement draws more Terminids to the battlefield, turning surgical strikes into prolonged, chaotic battles against ever-growing numbers. The scavenger ensures that Helldivers cannot operate on their own terms. It forces them into a fight they cannot control. Against the cyborg nation, the scavenger's effectiveness is more limited, as cyborg combat doctrine relies less on stealth and more on brute force warfare. However, its ability to summon swarms of Terminids has proven devastating against stationary cyborg encampments, where their heavily armored but immobile fire bases are overrun by wave after wave of unrelenting attackers. The scavenger itself poses little direct threat to cyborg forces, as its claws cannot penetrate their reinforced plating, but its ability to trigger hive-wide assaults makes it an indirect but effective weapon against them nonetheless. Strangely, the scavenger's relationship with other Terminid castes is one of absolute subservience. Unlike many eusocial insect species, where lower castes can display a degree of independence, the scavenger shows no signs of autonomy whatsoever. It does not challenge warriors for dominance. It does not engage in territorial disputes. It does not act outside of its role. It is a slave to its biology, a perfectly engineered component of the hive mind, incapable of deviation. It does not seek to preserve its own life unless doing so ensures the survival of the swarm. It will charge into gunfire, will hurl itself into explosives, will throw its fragile body into danger without hesitation, if doing so allows for even a fraction of a greater Terminid force to be preserved. If escape is possible, however, the scavenger will flee, using every tool at its disposal to evade death. If given the opportunity, it will burrow into the ground, disappearing in an instant beneath loose soil, sand, or debris, waiting for its attackers to move past before resurfacing once more. In more urban environments, or areas where burrowing is impossible, it has been observed using its spindly, agile form to dart between wreckage and obstacles, never moving in a straight line, always seeking to evade pursuit. Helldivers who fail to eliminate a fleeing scavenger will often find themselves hunted moments later, their presence fully known to the hive. The scavenger's defenses are not built for direct confrontation, but for persistence. Even when mortally wounded, it will continue to scream, to release pheromones, to ensure that its death was not in vain. Unlike the warriors, which can soak up gunfire before falling, the scavenger does not resist its own destruction. It embraces it, using its final moments to serve the hive one last time. This relentless survival strategy is precisely what makes it so dangerous. It does not need to kill you to win. It only needs to ensure that you will not survive for long. Even in its final moments, the scavenger is a biological weapon, a messenger of death whose survival is not measured in personal endurance, but in the devastation left in its wake. Whether lurking beneath the sands of a desolate world, skittering through the ruins of a fallen colony, or fleeing into the shadows to summon an army, it is a creature that thrives on persistence, on inevitability. To fight a scavenger is not to win a battle, it is to begin a war. The scavenger, though the lowest and weakest among the Terminids, is far from an inconsequential foe. In the chaotic, war-torn battlefields where Helldivers fight to uphold the glory of Super-Earth, these creatures serve as the first ripple in an impending tidal wave, the faint whisper of an approaching storm. A lone scavenger is no match for an armored Helldiver, its frail body incapable of sustaining direct damage, its claws too weak to pierce high-grade combat plating, and its attack patterns too erratic to be considered a real tactical threat. And yet, time and time again, squads who ignore them, who dismiss them as nothing more than a minor inconvenience, find themselves engulfed in an unstoppable flood of chitin and death. For the true danger of the scavenger is not in its ability to kill, it is in its ability to summon destruction. When a Helldiver squad first touches down on an infested world, the scavenger is often the first Terminid encountered, lurking in the shadows, crawling through the charred ruins of once thriving settlements, hiding beneath the scorched remains of war-ravaged colonies. It is never alone for long. The moment it detects an intruder, be it human, cyborg, or even rival Terminid subspecies, it reacts with terrifying speed, not by charging recklessly toward its target, but by releasing a piercing, ear-splitting shriek that echoes across the battlefield. This cry, though seemingly nothing more than a high-pitched biological alarm, is far more dangerous than it appears. It is a direct summons, a chemical-laced signal that saturates the air with pheromone spores, alerting every Terminid within range that prey has entered their domain. To hear this shriek is to know that within seconds, the battlefield will change. The air will grow heavy with the sound of skittering claws, and the swarm will come. Once the scavenger has called for reinforcements, it enters a state of frenzied, erratic aggression, darting toward its target in unpredictable bursts of movement, its razor-sharp claws lashing out at anything within reach. Though individually weak, its speed and rapid attack pattern can prove deadly if underestimated. Unlike the warriors, which rely on brute force, the scavenger's method of attack is one of persistence and harassment, constantly slashing, retreating, and re-engaging, forcing Helldivers to waste precious seconds and ammunition, fending off its relentless onslaught. Its primary goal in this phase is not to kill, but to disrupt, to force a squad out of formation, to make them hesitate, if only for a moment, so that by the time they realize what has happened, the true horror of the swarm is already upon them. Despite this frenzied aggression, the Scavenger is not a suicidal attacker. Unlike the warrior caste, which will charge headfirst into enemy fire, the Scavenger actively avoids prolonged combat, relying on speed, terrain, and sheer unpredictability to survive. If outnumbered or if its intended prey proves too resilient, it will immediately attempt to disengage, using burrowing tactics to disappear beneath the ground, emerging behind or beside its enemies moments later. In more urbanized environments or areas where burrowing is not possible, it will dart between obstacles, using its thin, wiry frame to weave between cover, making it difficult to track and even harder to kill. For all its cunning, however, the Scavenger is not built for sustained combat. Its exoskeleton, though durable against environmental hazards, is significantly weaker than that of higher-tier Terminids, making it highly vulnerable to direct weapons fire. Even small-caliber firearms can eliminate it in a single well-placed shot, and melee attacks, though risky, are often just as effective. Its greatest weakness lies in its reliance on mobility, meaning that any tactic that denies it movement, such as explosive ordnance, energy-based suppression fields, or high rate-of-fire weapons, can neutralize it before it has a chance to react. Helldiver squads that fail to prioritize Scavenger elimination often find themselves overwhelmed within minutes, as a single unchallenged Scavenger is capable of escalating a minor skirmish into an all-out survival scenario. This is why speed and precision are paramount. The golden rule when dealing with Scavengers is to kill them before they call for reinforcements. Any hesitation, any miscalculation, and what was once a manageable engagement will turn into a battle for survival. The best countermeasure against Scavengers is overwhelming first-contact firepower, ensuring that they are eliminated the moment they are detected. Weapons with high single-shot damage output, such as marksman rifles, burst-fire weaponry, and shotguns, are particularly effective, ensuring that no Scavenger remains alive long enough to sound the alarm. Automated defenses, including sentry guns, drones, and orbital strikes, can also provide valuable area denial, preventing Scavengers from escaping and alerting their kin. Melee combat, though a high-risk tactic, is surprisingly effective in low-ammo situations. A well-placed strike from a Helldiver combat knife or reinforced boot can crush a Scavenger's fragile skull, ensuring that no valuable ammunition is wasted on an enemy that can be dispatched with brute force. However, engaging in melee with multiple Scavengers is a death sentence, as their tendency to swarm and attack in rapid succession can overwhelm even the most skilled Helldiver within seconds. In high-difficulty engagements, Scavengers appear in much larger numbers, often dozens at a time, making their burrowing and evasion tactics even more effective. In these scenarios, Helldivers must coordinate their fire, ensuring that every squad member focuses on eliminating them before they can escape or summon additional forces. Observing recorded combat footage from Helldiver's 2 missions, it becomes clear that Scavengers, despite their apparent frailty, are often the first enemy to shift the tide of battle. In one recorded engagement, a Helldiver squad landed on a supposedly low-threat, bug-infested planet, encountering only scattered groups of Scavengers during their initial patrol. Within minutes, the swarm had mobilized, and the squad found themselves engaged in a full-scale battle against a growing flood of Terminids, including warriors, bile spewers, and even heavily armored behemoths. The cause? One Scavenger that had escaped detection, retreating underground to call for reinforcements. It is this ability, to turn one minor skirmish into a full-scale war, that makes the Scavenger one of the most deceptively dangerous creatures in the Terminid Hive. It is not the largest. It is not the strongest. It is not even the deadliest. But it is the spark that ignites the inferno, the signal that calls forth the endless tide of destruction. A Helldiver who underestimates a Scavenger will not die immediately. They will fight, they will struggle, they will resist for as long as they can. But by the time they realize their mistake, it will be too late. The ground will tremble beneath the march of thousands. The air will be thick with the acrid stench of Terminid flesh, and the battlefield will drown in the overwhelming presence of the swarm. because to let one scavenger scream is to invite the apocalypse. Conclusions and comparisons. As we conclude our exploration of the scavenger, the lowliest and most ubiquitous member of the Terminid faction, it's essential to summarize the key facts about this fascinating creature. The scavenger, characterized by its small size and simple morphology, serves a crucial role in the Terminid ecosystem. As an adolescent form of the more formidable warrior, it represents the early stages of a predatory lineage, highlighting the evolutionary strategies that enable survival in a hostile environment. Unlike other Terminids, which often exhibit advanced combat capabilities and aggressive behaviors, scavengers rely on their numbers and the ability to summon reinforcements through pheromone signaling. This unique tactic sets them apart, as they act as the vanguard of the Terminid swarm, utilizing their cries to attract more dangerous allies to confront Helldivers. Their basic claw attacks may seem trivial, but in large groups, they can pose a serious threat to unwary players, underscoring the importance of treating even the weakest enemies with respect. In comparison to other Terminids, such as the powerful warriors or the menacing bile spitters and pouncers, the scavenger embodies a different survival strategy. While many Terminids are designed for direct confrontation, the scavenger's primary function is to support and protect its colony, showcasing the importance of teamwork within the species. This adaptability and reliance on numbers reflect a different facet of evolutionary success, where cooperation can be as effective as brute strength. Looking forward, we can speculate about the potential evolution of the scavenger and the emergence of new variants in future updates of the Helldivers universe. As the game developers expand the ecosystem, we might see adaptations that enhance its survival capabilities, such as improved pheromone production, increased speed, or even new abilities that allow it to manipulate its environment further. This evolutionary trajectory could lead to new threats for players, making the humble scavenger a creature to watch in the ever-evolving landscape of Helldivers. As we wrap up our discussion on the scavenger, we invite you, the viewers, to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on this lowly yet fascinating creature? Have you encountered any surprising tactics while facing them in-game? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's discuss how we can better understand the intricacies of the Terminid ecosystem. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth explorations of Helldivers and its diverse array of species. Your feedback and engagement are vital as we delve deeper into this captivating universe. Until next time, stay vigilant out there, Helldivers.